to episode 3. Today's podcast, we're taking some inspiration from the Beatles song Eleanor Rigby to ask the question, all the lonely people, where do they all come from? And this time we'll have an answer. A number of years ago I was in hospital. I'd been very sick, as it turned out, and was taken to hospital by ambulance in the early hours of the morning, very ill, and I had blood poisoning and was in a very bad way. I had a gangrenous appendix apparently and had to have it removed and needed to have lots of antibiotics put through me for the next few days to try and cure this blood poisoning that I had. So it wasn't a great time. What didn't help was each morning, I think it was about 10 o'clock, visiting hours would start and I was in a room, the typical 4-bed room, and I'd watch as the visitors would file in to the other people, would come in and they'd have visitors and cards and maybe flowers or balloons, and people would come in and out. Unfortunately, no one came to see me. I'd watch that happening, and after a few days, one of the ladies who was visiting the man in the next bed came and said to me, I notice you haven't had any visitors. Don't you have any family or friends? And I just didn't have an answer for her. It was just one of those moments that then just highlighted and reinforced the loneliness that I was experiencing, to think that I'd been in this town for a number of years. I could be that ill, spend days in hospital, and yet no one thought enough of me to actually come and visit me in hospital over about 5 days. So it didn't help the recovery at all. Just that thought that there was no one really thinking of you. In a great universal sense, I mean, our planet is a very lonely planet. It is here by itself. There's no one near it. I suppose we've got our little friend the moon up there, but otherwise there's no one near it and there's no one else. There's really no other planet that we interact with. And it certainly has, I know there's a time, there was maybe a TV show that was titled The Lonely Planet, and that certainly describes where we are. We are just here by ourselves, with no one else looking out for us and no one else caring for us. On an individual level though, it's hard to fathom that on a planet with billions and billions of people, that there can be people who are experiencing loneliness, and it seems to be something that's actually on the rise. And loneliness, it's a health issue as well. It's a psychological issue, it's a health issue. People who are lonely have had some bad health effects, from increased blood pressure, heart problems, being overweight, sleeplessness, cognitive decline, high rates of depression, anxiety and suicide, reduced length of life, early onset Alzheimer's disease. There are a number of health conditions related to being lonely, and it's just almost inconceivable how does this happen. So what is it like to be lonely? I'd just like to talk to that one first of all. So for many of us who in the past few years, having gone through the COVID pandemic, may have experienced lockdowns where there was a lot of confined to house and socialisation was really, really curtailed. And this is one of the big things of loneliness, is you just notice you just don't have social activity, you decrease social interaction. It's not that your social diary is empty, you just don't have one. So if you remember what it was like during lockdown, and if people were feeling that loneliness and that social isolation, for me that was my normal state of affairs. In fact, lockdown I actually felt a bit happier because I could think, well, no one's coming to visit me, I'm not doing anything. It's because of lockdown, not because there is no one who wants to socialise with me. So I actually felt great for a while. And particularly, I think after the second lockdown ended and suddenly we were out, everyone was out to do things, and I went out and saw there were just suddenly all groups of people picnicking and having gatherings, and all these sorts of friends all getting together, and realised there was no one that wanted to be with me, socialise with me, or that my socialisation would change now that lockdown was over. I didn't socialise before, now I still wouldn't be socialising. The difference now being it was because there was no one who wanted to spend time with me or wasn't interested in me, rather than being they can't do it because of lockdown. So that is, sort of the major part of this part of being socially isolated, is another way to say it, or a lonely person. You just don't do stuff. You think, I'd like to go and do something with someone, and you just realise, well, there's no one to ask to go and do it. Or you think you organise something and you just think, well, who would turn up, or who would actually be happy for me to do something with, and you're just feeling, well, I can't think of anyone that actually would be happy to spend time with me. Where I live currently, I've lived for over 2 years. In that time, I had one visitor, and that was just over 2 years ago. Otherwise, I can say in that time, no one's dropped in to see me, and conversely, there's no one I have dropped in to see as well. I mean, just things that used to happen as normal. And that has been, in my previous house, I think, a similar thing. I could go, say, there was periods of years where I had no visitor. To think of the last time I actually popped over to see someone for coffee would be over 5 years, 6 years ago. To do things with people, it just doesn't. I just don't do things. I went years and I wouldn't organise a birthday party because I just didn't feel like there was anyone to invite, or if I did, I was pretty sure they wouldn't turn up, which exactly did happen one year. I did organise, thought, I'll go on a limb here and I'll invite people and I'll organise some drinks for my birthday, and no one turned up for it. And that was just one of those moments that reinforces sort of that you are a lonely, socially isolated person, that no one is thinking of you or thinks enough of you to turn up for your birthday. So that's, that really is the main feature of it, just the lack of things you do, the lack of activity, and just lack of opportunity, I guess. The obviously second part of isolation is the lack of conversation. Just realising that, I live alone, and pretty much once I've left work, or thinking, well, that's it, I won't talk to anyone again until I come back to work the next day. Or I won't, you don't have conversations, or, work is work-related conversations, but the normal sort of things we get in, discuss and have stuff and debrief and ask about how's your day and all those sort of things. I just don't have those conversations. That becomes a greater problem when you really feel you have an issue where you really want to talk to someone about it, and you just realise there is no one to talk about it. You just feel there's no one you can approach. There's no one who'll be interested, or no one who cares to actually want to talk to you, or would be happy to listen for when you talk about something. So it results in basically, things staying bottled up for it that you just can't release. apart from not being able to talk, you also realise at times no one celebrates. There's no one to celebrate your wins with you. Many years ago when I was refereeing football and got to referee my senior grand finals, and that was a big thing. And went out to grand final day and there was a couple of referees and realised, the other people, there were family members or friends or someone had come out to support them on this big day, their grand final day. But there was no one, not even from our Referees Association, had come out to support the referees, or could I say, was there anyone to support me for the day, on that day. So it's just no one to really to share that moment with you, and the feeling that nobody was happy for you for that achievement and sharing it. Another one probably happened recently when some people may know it has been a long-term thing to try and bench press 100 kilograms. It has so many setbacks and problems with that, and I've just been something I've been going for years and years and years. And the gym I was at, it was interesting that you'd watch some people who'd go and be doing some PBs and setting big lifts, and then be a big group around them, they'd be cheering and whooping and carrying on, supporting them, and when they made that PB, it was congratulations, pats on the back. There's always someone there to support and encourage and cheer them. In my case, as I was working through this, that didn't happen. I occasionally get a spotter, and I think one person may have known that I'd actually, set a new record for myself, but it just wasn't something that had anyone's support, or cheering or anything. It was just almost done privately. As some people then know, due to some recent issues, I actually then got banned from that gym. So I basically was training at my work, and I did finally make my 100 kilogram bench press, but it was done here, alone, by myself, no one seeing it, no one supporting it, and no one cheering it on, and so there was no one to share the moment with. Even then, for instance, posting it on social media, I think he got 1 like for it. So that was saying, okay, one person was interested enough to see that was a big thing. 4 out of, I think, maybe like 100 viewers of the story, 1 like. So, that comes back to, who cares about it? So it was just disappointing that there was no way to share what was a really big moment for myself. So, these are some of the parts with loneliness, and that part is possibly not surprising when you feel you are disconnected and don't have support, don't have people to talk to, don't get to celebrate. It's funny how that links to the depression and anxiety, because I think that was something that would feed on, and whether there is a cycle that feeds on each other in there. But depression is, or loneliness, I think is often, there are periods of it. Through my life there's definitely been extended periods of loneliness, and that feeling of loneliness has just sat there in the background, but it's just come to fore. There'll just be moments that would highlight it again. Certainly for me, it's most New Year's Eve, because the majority of New Year's Eves I have spent alone, and that has been just something thinking, here's a big time, everyone's out, there's parties, there's bits going on, and I haven't been part of anything, I haven't been able to organise, I haven't been invited to anything, there's nowhere I felt to go to celebrate. So New Year's Eve, it was an annual thought of, here's my annual loneliness reminder, New Year's Eve, yep, by myself again. Here we go for it. It's, as I said, going for 20 years and not having a birthday celebration for 20 years. A lot because, that was my annual reminder. In fact, there was a period when I actually used to deactivate my Facebook for a few days around my birthday, because I'd be embarrassed by how few people would actually, go and post on my timeline, happy birthday. And I didn't want anyone else to see how small that number was. So I actually thought, if I deactivate for a few days, then it gets missed. No one can do it, so it doesn't get seen for it. Because I think, the number of people say that would post a happy birthday or something on my timeline is probably less than 20% of the number of people that I think I'd go and wish happy birthday to. It's, typically I won't actually hear the words happy birthday spoken to me on my birthday, because there's virtually no one knows when my birthday is. And there's no one who will actually say those words. I might, there's a couple of texts or a couple of things, but to actually have those words said in person, it doesn't happen. And it's all those little things, but just sort of little moments that reinforce, yep, this is not normal, yes. It just reinforces that feeling of loneliness. And loneliness really is a disconnect. It is certainly a feeling, but it is also just this disconnection and constant feeling that you are not connected to society. This particular feeling usually comes when I go home, and probably the moment I turn the key, go into the door of my unit, because that's the moment I almost leave the world and go into my unit and really think, I feel the most disconnected from the world, because there's no one there. I live alone. There's no one to speak to. I won't see anyone, and it won't happen. It's not uncommon to go a weekend and maybe the only person I'll speak to is a shop assistant or a person at the butcher's, quick g'day, or maybe just at the gym, just a quick wave to someone. But a genuine conversation and genuine social interaction, just there'd be none for the whole weekend. And that's the situation. That's what happens. But it's a case of, how do we get here? How does someone end up like that? Well, certainly there are sort of active and what I call active and passive mechanisms for doing so. There are parts that have happened where you've had a change of circumstances. You've moved around, changed cities. Something's happened that's put distance, or you no longer see people that you used to see and associate with. And I think early on I decided that you have context-specific friends, as I call them. They are friends, and you socially interact while you see them, whether at work, at the gym, a sporting club, or some social interest. But it didn't exist, you didn't develop a friendship outside that context. And when you were no longer part of that context, then the social interaction would stop for it. So this certainly, I've found that a few of the workplaces I've been at, and something came at school, sort of end of year 12. So I was very young, so my 18th birthday didn't occur during high school, year 11 and 12. It wasn't until the year after, and many months after. And as it was coming up, I just realised I have had nothing to do with these people at school since we left. Basically, it was like flicking a switch. We had social interaction, we did things, we no longer see each other at school, bang. And they were basically now, might as well have been a bunch of strangers. So I'd gone months and months and months with just zero interaction. And so I didn't have an 18th. Basically, I was just thinking there's no one to invite. It would have felt horribly awkward to invite these people who they were no longer part of my life. They were, I wasn't obviously part of their life, and for the most part, I actually haven't had anything to do with them again. Say 1 or 2 school reunions. That's about it. There's certainly no lifelong friends from school going on. It's just been end of school and situation. Workplaces, some of the gyms I've been to, and some of the social clubs and areas I had been members of over the years seem to be the same thing. So there can be the fact that just purely you change your context and social interactions drop off from there. There's also active measures where I've experienced a few times people have decided, made an active decision to exclude you or not to involve you socially. I talked previously about being bullied at school and the change that made, where suddenly I was now excluded and I wasn't someone to be socialised with. And immediately that did start a pattern that did last quite a long time for it, and has happened a number of times. Had another time back in Canberra where I was, depression was quite an issue, but I thought I had a decent set of people supporting me. And not surprisingly, it relates to New Year's Eve. One of the times when we actually thought we had a social group, and were going out and do things on New Year's Eve, and actually had a couple of great New Year's Eve celebrations. And suddenly there was like, this is all very quiet, I'm not hearing anything, or people aren't returning the messages, and what's going on for New Year's Eve? And finally I just got a message back from someone that, everyone, I'm in Canberra, everyone's in Sydney. They've organised something from Sydney, and well, sorry, you're not part of the group anymore. This one person in the group just decided that I couldn't contribute positively to their life, so he'd just gone, and the term would have been unfriended me, and the rest of the group had just followed suit for it. And that was how I found out on New Year's Eve. And that was someone who was, battling, really having a hard time trying to get onto depression, and was, having the socialisation, to have a group of friends just callously drop you because, I think the term back then was, you were high maintenance, you took effort, and they just weren't prepared to support me anymore. And that hit so hard, that just pushed me to a new level of loneliness and depression that had some unfortunate results from that one. And basically, I've never heard from those people again. There was never any follow-up, they've never said anything, never explained anything. For New Year's Eve, that was it. Again, flicked a switch and people were gone. The third occasion that has happened has been the one I talked about more recently, after I had the friend make the false accusation of stalking against me, and then it appears, they went, and I think their aim was to go and spread the story around town to deliberately turn people against me, and it succeeded. If that was their plan, it succeeded. As the list of people who suddenly were not interacting with me suddenly dropped off on Instagram or stopped responding to messages, blocked me. And these were people, may not have been great friends, but people I could still talk to, sent messages on social media. If I saw them out, you could say g'day and have a chat to. Maybe went to the gym with and talked to. And these are people I'd known, many of them for years. And there was probably over 24 people that suddenly, bang, I was cut from them. I think I ended up the total more like 35 people who just blocked, cut off, and people who, if I have seen them, either they have refused to talk to me, they got to that level, or I've got death stares off a few. So that comes back to the hatred, but it's just suddenly the group of people that I have to associate and do some stuff with shrank dramatically in a period of months for it. So there are active things that people do, and that certainly was contributing to, amongst other things, loneliness. Just realising all these constantly seeing, someone else has blocked, someone else has stopped my messages, someone else has forgotten, someone else has forgotten. Not talking, blocked, not messaging. Just finding that's like a little drip feed. Certainly was something else that, again, just gave that heightened that feeling of loneliness that comes in as the circle was shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Also the problem that came with really no one to talk to say, hey, this is going on, what do I do for it? So it was a very isolated, disconnected feeling. Other thing, I've had active things happen too. I've been at one workplace where twice the staff there organised staff drinks, but did not invite me. In fact, I was most definitely not invited to the staff drinks. Occasion there was a housewarming, and apparently everyone said, "Oh, we'll meet before the housewarming. We'll meet down at the bar or the pub there at 6:30. I was told meet at 6:30. So I turned up at 6:30, and surprisingly, everyone else was there. And that was because everyone else was told to meet at 5:00. I was told to meet at 6:30 to go to the party at 7. And basically we went to this person's house up the road, and these workmates, I'll use that term very loosely, basically then bang. I might as well not have known them. They were people who refused to acknowledge I exist and just did not speak to me for the rest of the evening at the party. That happened twice. Someone else had a housewarming, and there were some of the guys that I work with, they turn up there even just blankly, didn't even acknowledge my presence. You say hello, speak to them, and so you're left sort of standing there. Oh shit. So it's not that you don't socialise. Sometimes you can go out, you can be in a crowd of people doing things and still get this feeling of loneliness. I remember I sort of got forced to go on our harbour cruise, the half-year harbour cruise at Union. I really didn't want to go on it, but I was sort of talked into going. And went on there, and luckily there was someone I had known from school and played hockey with and used for the hockey club was there because he knew someone else. So there was someone initially to talk to and say hello to, and that was great. And then after that, it was, you'd look around the room, or the boat as it was, and just look for someone to make eye contact, or someone who just would, acknowledge you and think, I can go and talk to them. And I just got to the stage where wow, I just don't think there is anyone to talk to here. And basically I did nothing, I just walked around in circles, stood by myself, stood in the corner, just sat, realised no one came up to talk to me, and but to look to someone who looked like they actually would be happy for me to come and talk to them, or would come and stand there and just get ignored. And again, that was just one of those things that highlighted that feeling of loneliness, that you can actually be in a great crowd of people and you can feel alone through the actions of other people in there. It's an unusual situation. So it does sort of help answer. We'll come to why that answers the question in a moment for it. But there are little things that we do that it was interesting a couple of years ago where I did actually get a birthday party where a number of people turned up. I thought I'll do this, I'll be proactive. I'll actually try and make it happen. I'll invite people to a birthday party. So I invited a number of people to that birthday party. It's quite interesting that, out of all those people invited, I think I've only actually one of those people I actually ever got an invite back to one of their birthday parties. That was it. So I think in the times I've been in the last few years in Wollongong, I've probably been to invited to 2 birthday parties, and that was it. So it's just one of those interesting parts for it that you just don't get thought of in there. And this is sort of leads to a question of the passive parts of how they're lonely people. Because there are people that you just don't think to talk to. You don't think you want to spend time with. They just don't come to mind. So I know on my social media, if I look at the chats, I'd probably initiate 95% of the chats on my social media. Of the 5% initiated by someone else, half of those unfortunately probably due to work. So it is really rare to actually get something social, someone actually start a chat or respond to something that's non-work related. That is just incredibly rare. So if we come to our question, where do all these lonely people come from? They don't come from anywhere. They are right beside you. They are the people you are with every day, but they are the people you don't see. They are the people you don't look at. The people you don't think about. The people that aren't on your mind and aren't in your heart. They are possibly, the unpretty people. They're not looking, they're not charismatic, they're not fun people. The people we shun, the people we look down on. But they are all around us. So the lonely people don't come from anywhere. They are right beside you. Lonely people are made by the various actions. Some people may choose loneliness or social isolation because it suits them. But otherwise, it's basically people who society has excluded or chosen to exclude, or somehow there's been an effort to exclude them and form a disconnect with them. That's where it happens. It was incredible to read that people may remember a very popular entertainer called Benny Hill, English entertainer. He's probably hear his theme song go around many years ago. Benny Hill was a wonderful, amazing person. He died alone. He had a heart attack in a unit. He lived alone, and he probably wasn't found until about 3 days afterwards, when someone realised the television was too loud or had still been running through the night and something. And you think, that's incredible. He was a man who was so generous, so well known, died alone, and no one checked on him. There was no one thinking of him. And how, as we, as a world, society, how do we let that happen? How do we not have people who are lonely? Why are there these people we choose to not think about? What is the action that people just aren't in your minds and aren't thought about? It's a difficult one, because I guess I'm on the receiving end of it, rather than people who are out there to make people lonely for, rather to disconnect people. So it may say, well, you should go out and do things. You should try. That's a really easy thing to say, but if you try and realise, try what, with whom, there's no practice. It's a really hard way to undo things. You can go out and join groups, and I have recently joined a group just to try and get that happening. But to get things going on a social and get some genuine connection with people who have a genuine interest with you and know they want to spend time with you, that they care for you and they think about you, that's a really tricky one. So that part, as a solution to how I get over loneliness, is to keep pushing, keep doing the right thing. I guess keep being, if you are a good person, keep being a good person. And if you keep doing that, you gradually try and attract people to you. It's very hard to go out and find, I'll just make some friends. And so particularly as someone like myself who's not a charismatic, good-looking person, and is not someone that people seem to be drawn to. But we can also look at how we treat other people. Can we treat people better? Because we need to treat people better. And in these days, we need to make more real connections and deal on a real level rather than just our social media and chats. Making real connections with people, showing that we care, making that little bit of effort, not forgetting about people and not shunning people. Speaking to that person beside you, making that little conversation. That's what we need to be doing for it. And we have a loneliness epidemic that needs to be cured. It's having terrible health effects, as I said before, and serious health effects on people. So even on just a basic health epidemic, it is a problem that needs attention. So do check on people. Why not just give a little comment to the people? Make a little message. How about a good day, how you going, as we say. Do reach out more often. Do increase your social interaction. Just don't think of someone, I only think of them when you want something from them. Let's make some more genuine connections with people and make them more meaningful, our interactions. People should not be left to feel alone. It is a terrible, terrible thing that there are people suffering loneliness, and I said are made to be lonely. Often not through choice. It is at the society level and individual level, there are choices made to exclude and disconnect with these people. And that's a terrible thing to do that. It's a terrible thing to not only exclude people or to actually go and actively exclude someone for no particularly good reason. It can be some of the coldest, cruelest, most callous things that a person can do and we society can do for our own petty reasons often is to glorify ourselves, ingratiate ourselves or make ourselves look good and just exclude other people, cut other people out of our lives, and it's just a nasty thing. But it has been done, and it's as someone who has had that done to them recently by someone and over the years. We need to be better. We need to look after each other a lot more. So that my message really is, please reach out, keep talking to people, keep communicating with people. Don't always just pick the good-looking and popular people. Think about those other people on your list and the people that you know. Do think about being a bit more inclusive and including them in doing things. And maybe say yes to that invite when you get one. And don't say no or don't respond. Make an effort to it. If someone's making an effort, why don't you reciprocate? It comes down to just being nicer and better to one another, which as a planet that's very lonely, we need to look after one another. Because if we don't look after one another, no one's going to come and look after us. So that's my thoughts on it. My next podcast is again going to take a line from a song, Cliff Richard's song, title of a song, and it will be It's So Funny We Don't Talk Anymore. So we'll be talking about talking and the lack of talking in the next podcast, so hope to join you then. Until next time, take care, look after each other, show more love. Bye-bye.